You're on the air with Florenza, your podcast destination for authentic conversations with a twist. So, grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and join me on this unique literary journey. Cheers! Kieran Scott is an accomplished author known for her engaging and suspenseful novels. With a degree in English and journalism, she has written over 50 novels for children and teens, many of which have become New York Times bestsellers under her pseudonym, Kate Bryant. She currently lives in New Jersey with her husband and 2 sons. Her newest release, People Will Talk, delivers a gripping and suspenseful narrative that blends elements of mystery and social drama. Set in the picturesque beachside town of Cape May, the story revolves around the annual Frank family clambake where 3 women, Maya, Catherine, and Leanne, find themselves entangled in a murder mystery after a wedding goes horribly wrong. As they navigate their complicated relationships with the charming yet troublesome Peter Frank, they must work together to uncover the truth and clear their names. Please join me in welcoming Kieran Scott to the show. Oh my gosh, thank you again, Kieran, for joining me. I am so excited to jump right in. I know that before we came on the air that we were having so much fun, so I am really trying to pull all my enthusiasm back just a bit. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so before we start getting into all of the questions, as is my tradition, we are going to toast to a successful show. I am drinking a sweet red, and you have,
I have water in a varsity cheerleading cup that my best friend had made for me after high school.
So you had that cup for about 2 years then, because you graduated.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cheers.
I thought you were class 2022. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
So that is very good. We are talking about your newest release, which is People Will Talk. And I love that title because I am, as much as I'm not a gossip, I am about that gossip life. And it definitely sounds like there's some juicy tidbits going on. I read a little bit about the book, but go ahead and tell the listeners more about the book to get them enticed to run out and grab a copy.
So the book is, it's from 3 points of view, 3 women's points of view, and they all think that they're going to the home of a man who's in their lives for an annual clam bake. And when they arrive at the clam bake, they learn pretty quickly that it's actually his surprise wedding. And they all have reasons to be very upset that he's marrying at all, let alone the person that he's marrying. So there's a lot of intrigue that comes of that. And by the end of the night, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything because we all know it's a murder mystery, the bride is dead and our 3 POVs are suspects. So it's really fun. I think it's really twisty. And I just really loved exploring the relationship between these 3 women who have every reason to dislike each other, but end up having to sort of team up to figure out what's actually going on.
Now, do the women represent any friendships that you have? Are there people in your lives that after reading the book called you up and said, okay, now what's going on?
We're getting a little close here, Kieran. Yeah, so my best friend Shira is a wedding planner. So a lot of Catherine was based on Shira, but mostly just I got a lot of logistical stuff from that relationship, like how things would actually work for a wedding planner or a wedding influencer. Her personality isn't really Shira. Shira reminds me of you, actually. She's got a big personality. She's like really funny. She's always on. She loves to talk. That's Shira. So that's not really Catherine. But then there's another side of Catherine, which is the side that has been obsessed with this man, with Peter Frank, since she was very young, and has always thought that if she just did the right thing or if the timing was just right, they would end up together. And that's actually based on another friend of mine who always had those relationships when we were young, where she wanted to change the guy she was with. And if she could just change him this way, they would stay together. She eventually got out of that phase and got married to an incredible guy. But I sort of based that side of Catherine's personality on early days
Of
Wendy.
that friend. Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Now, if Maya, Catherine, and Leanne were to discover a hidden room in the Frank family's Cape May house, what secrets or items do you think they would find that could change the course of the story?
That's a good question. Let's see. So, what would they find in a secret room? So, without giving too much away, I think they would probably find a lot of things that Peter's parents had hidden away
Okay.
over the course of their lives because they're very wealthy. And as we know, wealthy people get into a lot of mischief.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they have a lot of secrets. And, you know, they are very protective of their children. So I feel like they would definitely find some things that would make them question that particular relationship. And Catherine really respects Peter's mom, maybe would question that a little bit. Um, yeah, I feel like I think the parents spend the most time there, so they would have a lot of little things hidden away.
Ooh, something that would make Catherine question what she thought her possible in-laws would do. I like
Exactly,
that.
exactly.
Gonna make me go through my mother-in-law's attic. Okay.
No.
Now, how did you balance the setting of Cape May with the underlying tension and drama of the plot? Specifically, were there any specific locations in Camp May that inspired key scenes in the book?
So I set the book partially in Cape May. One because I go to the Jersey Shore every year. Two because I love it there. And Cape May is this beautiful town. It's so idyllic, right? It's got all these incredible Victorian homes. You know, there's a beautiful little downtown with shopping, and everybody's always doing sports, and you know, it's a very healthy lifestyle. And I thought, what better place to set this kind of dark murder mystery and this family with this kind of underbelly of of discord than to have it be in this really idyllic setting. So that always is, it's always intriguing to me. I think it's intriguing to a lot of people, right? When you see like everything's perfect, but then you
Yes.
find out it's really just not perfect at all. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I would say that I don't think that any specific locations inspired bits of the story, except for the fact that like, you know, there are a lot of little playgrounds there. And like I have scenes where Leanne and her best friend go looking for her son. And, you know, they go to the playground and, you know, just kind of making sure that I set it all up so that it would be realistic to the actual
Okay.
place. Every little place they go, either it exists in real life or it's based on something that exists.
Nice. I like that. Now, Peter Frank's charm is undeniable. But if he had a secret hobby or talent that none of the characters knew about, what would it be and how might it have influenced the story? Like, what is his talent other than being charming and so darn good looking and
You're gonna
all that?
laugh, but I feel like he's really good at karaoke. Like,
Ooh.
I mean, I imagine him as being this kind of like broad-chested, upright, like he'd have good lungs, he'd have good projection.
Uh-huh.
And I also think that like, whereas he's always trying to look a certain way, I think that he would really be a great actor. I mean, he also does a lot of acting, right? I think he would
Uh-huh.
just be a great performer. And I could imagine him having a really good singing voice. And I think it just feeds into this whole idea of like he's different with every person in his life.
A
And yeah,
chameleon.
makes him a performer. And I think like he'd be a great karaoke performer.
Ooh, so you're going to have to put together this great little playlist now
Has some
so that
songs.
your readers can listen as they're reading. You know, that's the new rave right now is putting together these playlists.
No, I keep hearing that. I really have to do that at one point. I haven't
Uh-huh.
tried.
Yes, absolutely. Now, during the writing process, did you ever consider a different ending for the book? And if so, what would it have been? And what made you ultimately settle on the ending that you did? You don't have to give a spoiler alert, but just
Okay.
kind of the background behind it.
So I feel like this happens to me all the time when I'm writing. I always start out with one murderer in mind. I have three mystery novels now, and each one, you know, has obviously a reveal at the end. And I almost always change it halfway through. Or I add another twist that makes it a little bit different than it was. And in this case, there was definitely a different perpetrator of the murder, but the twist was always the same. So without
Okay.
giving too much away, there
Uh-huh.
is a little twist at the end. That was always the same, but the person who actually did it was different. And I realized that I had a better character with a better motivation and a more interesting ending in me. And I
Hmm.
figured one out, I think. I hope it's better than what I tossed.
Nice. Now, would you consider yourself a plotter or a pantser or a combination of both?
I am definitely a plotter. I write really detailed outlines. I do a lot of the work in the outline
Okay.
stage. Even if like dialogue or like clothing comes to me during the outline stage, I'll put it down so I don't forget. But I will say with these three, I used to write a lot for young adults and for children, always outlined and stuck to the outline. For these three adult books, I have done a little bit of pantsing, like in the middle
Hmm.
of it, kind of changed course a little, which is terrifying to me, but it's worked out.
Now, how did you like? What was your experience other than the terrifying? Because plots terrify me. Like, whew, because the characters come to me and they tell me their names and what they like and their backstory, and it's just like this whole little movie going on in my head. What was that like for you during that stage of operating in a pantser mindset? Did you feel like you were completely losing control, or were you able to exhale and go with the flow?
I was pretty much able to exhale and go with the flow. I think there's always a piece of me in the back of my mind that feels like when I go off course, I'm definitely creating a hole that I won't know, that I won't find, or
Mm,
I won't know about, I won't remember. But I will say I'm blessed to have an incredible editor who will find my holes.
yes.
So, I kind of feel like I do have that fallback position where like if I messed it up, somebody will call me on it.
Nice. I love that. If you could spend a day with one of your characters in Cape May, now I know you referenced two of them being loosely based on Friends, so not necessarily those that are like already based on Friends. Who would it be, and what would you do together?
Oh gosh, it would definitely be Maya, and I would definitely have her give me a tennis lesson.
Ooh,
100%.
nice.
I love tennis. I watch tennis like a fiend, but I don't play. And I think it's partially, I took lessons once in my 30s and I just kind of gave up on it. But I think I would be good at it if I just had somebody who could actually teach me.
Uh-huh. Nice, nice. For Maya, Catherine, and Leanne, what was the most challenging part of working together, those three characters, um, with them solving the mystery, given their complicated histories with Peter?
Yeah, the hardest thing about writing that relationship was remembering always who knew what when
Mm,
and and also what their perceptions of that knowledge would be because it's going
hmm.
to be different for each character. So there's a really big secret between Leanne and Catherine. And I feel like Catherine's motivations always had to be a little bit based on keeping the secret. And Leanne's motivations always had to be a little bit based on the fact that she thinks Catherine's hiding something from her.
Ooh,
So, like every scene, I had to kind of ground myself and sit down and say, okay, Catherine found this out in the last scene, but Leanne doesn't know this yet. Let's make sure that their interaction reflects that. And that could create a huge hole if you
yeah.
don't really concentrate on that. So that was tough for sure. Hopefully I pulled it off.
Now, Peter Frank is quite the heartbeat. If he were to write a memoir, what do you think the title of it would be?
Oh my God, I am so bad at titles. My every title that I title my books gets changed by someone within Simon and Schuster. But maybe it would be something egotistical, right? Like it would have to be called like Frankly Me or
Oh,
something. My last name is
nice.
Peter Frank, you
Yes,
know?
I like that. I like that a lot. The impromptu wedding and the dramatic chandelier incidents are pivotal moments. What inspired these plot twists? And did you have any alternative scenarios in mind before plotting? Because I know
Yeah,
that you're a plotter.
yeah. So the surprise wedding was inspired by a surprise wedding that I attended, where we all sort of kind of maybe knew something was happening, but weren't totally sure. It turned out to be a very joyous occasion. But the guy who was getting married is an old friend of my husband's, and he's just like he's not Peter, but he's very good looking. He's charming. He actually has a son. Maybe he is Peter. I don't know. But
Sounded
but
like Peter.
anyway, he had like a rough time of it in the romance department, and we were all really excited that he was getting married to someone that we all love, and she's amazing, and it was all working out. But while I was standing there, I was thinking, imagine if like there were people here who actually thought they were going to a barbecue, like who he dated in the past, who were really pissed that he was getting married. Like,
Yeah.
what could come of that? What interesting things could happen. I was imagining like fights and thrown over wedding cakes and whatever. And just came, that kind of kept percolating. And I decided to write a murder mystery surrounded by that scenario. So that's where the surprise wedding came from. The chandelier thing was inspired by me basically stalking wedding Pinterest boards and different
Yes.
like brides magazines and seeing
Uh-huh.
all incredible people hang the most incredible ornate chandeliers from inside these tents.
Yes.
Just the structure, I'm like, how does it hold that
Yep.
thing? Like, that is always fascinating to me. So there were definitely other ideas in my head about how the murder might occur. But when I thought about trying to be outside the box, trying to be interesting, and trying to make the murder part of the organic story,
Hmm.
it was like, why not have something that had to do with the wedding be the murder weapon? And then the chandelier thing came from there.
Nice. Now, are you that person that when someone invites you to an event or to something that you're sitting there observing, like taking these mental notes of this will be a great story, this will be a great story?
Yes, 100%. Nothing is safe.
Nobody, nothing. I
No.
love it. Now, if Maya, Catherine, and Leanne were to form a detective agency after the events of the book, I know you don't do titles, but what would the name of the detective agency be? And what do you think would be their first case?
Wow, that's tough. I mean, it has to be three something women. I'm trying to think of a good moniker, like three badass women or something like that. I'd
I
have to
like
think
that.
about it. I'll come
That
up with
works.
something. Um, and then their first case, huh? I'm trying to think of who else in the story would be worth getting rid of. It's funny. I maybe Peter's brother. There was like this weird specter. Like Peter's brother's barely in the story, but he's such
Uh-huh.
a jerk. Like he was in love with the woman who ends up dead, and he basically leaves essentially right after the wedding happens and never checks in, never says like, what are you okay? Never comes back to make sure his family's all right. I always just sort of saw him as that guy who was like, it's all about me. And if you don't care about me, then I don't care about you. I feel like somebody's got to off him. So maybe it would be him.
Ooh, his murder. And then they too might be seen as victims again. Um,
Possibly.
what's a question that of all the interviews that you've done, what one question do you have that you are dying to be asked but have never been asked?
Hmm. It's funny. When I was writing young adult all the time, people would always ask me what of my books is my favorite, which of my books is my favorite. And, no one has asked me that since I started writing for adult. And I wonder what that's about. It's interesting. But
Do you have a favorite?
I do have a favorite, even though I always used to say it's like picking your favorite child. My favorite one is Wish You Were Gone, which was the first one.
Hmm.
That one right there.
I see
Uh,
that one. Yes.
and yeah, it was sort of like it just took me forever. And so then once it was done, I just felt so triumphant. And there were so many, I ended up switching agents twice in the process. And I had a really good friend of mine, Jen, kind of cheerlead me through the whole process and tell me, like, you've got to take that manuscript out of a drawer again and find someone to represent it. It's so good. And it was based a lot on my family life growing up. So there's like so much about it. It was my first book for adults, so it was a whole different thing for me. So there's so much about it that I felt very proud of. So I think of the three, it's my favorite. And it's different than the other two in that I think it's a little bit less frothy. Not that a murder
Hmm.
mystery is ever frothy, but I think it's just a little bit more, um, it's a little bit darker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of the two styles, which is more closely resemblance of you? The frothy or the
I
dark?
think probably the frothy. Because as you can see, I'm a kind of a bubbly person. I'm generally very optimistic. And so when people find out, I wrote a lot of murder mysteries for young adults as well. When people find out that I write those books, they're always surprised, because I come off as such a happy, peppy, upbeat
Uh-huh.
person. So it's nice. I think it's fun to be able to bring in that sense of humor
Okay.
and that kind of lightness.
What prompted the switch from YA to adult? Was there just like this organic shift over, or was it a conscious thought of, hey, let me try my hand at this?
So I got to a point, this is going back like 10 years or so, I got to a point where um, I just realized that I was a little bit old to be writing YA. I felt very disconnected from teens. You know, when you're in
Hmm.
your 20s, you can still sort of be part of the culture. And then when you're in your 30s, you can, I feel like I was kind of staying connected in various ways. But once I got to my 40s, I was like, okay, they're communicating in ways I never communicated. They're doing things I never did. I don't know if I can do that authentically. And on top of that, there was a shift in what kids were reading, and they were reading a lot of dystopia. They were reading a lot of
Hmm.
like vampire, a lot of like things that I don't really write, or I don't really have an interest in writing. So I just kind of sat with it and decided that I'd been an adult for long enough that I must have some adult stories to tell. And I started working on Wish You Were Gone.
Nice. Well, I appreciate the shift. I mean, I am, well, way over 40, 50, and yes, we're already in that 6-0 area. So
You would never know it.
thank you. Thank you. Where are the listeners able to interact with you?
Oh, so I'm mostly on Instagram at Kieran Scott Author. That's where I really spend my time responding and posting and making sure I'm up to date with what's going on. I'm also on Threads now, but I update that less
Yeah.
often.
Yeah. I am trying to get with the threads. I need to get better with it. So we have come to the part of our show where we have a little fun. This is our segment called This or That. And they are so random. I inadvertently, oh, you know what? Let's go with the food
Ooh,
category.
okay.
This or that food. All right. And so legit, so random. When I shout them out, this is going to be my first time hearing it too.
Okay.
So, sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Yes, breakfast for dinner.
Yes, exactly.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Ice cream or frozen yogurt?
Ice cream.
Burger or tacos?
Oh, that's the hardest one. Tacos.
Yes. Let's see, steak or seafood?
Steak.
And the last one, cheese platter or charcuterie board?
Hmm. I think cheese platter.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I am so thrilled that we had a chance to chat about your book. And people will talk and about the characters and having fun with them. And I look forward to having you back on the show.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it too. It's been fun.
Thank you. And this wraps up another episode of On the Air with Florenza. You may follow me on all social media platforms under Florenza.Lee or via my website at florenza.org. Until next time, cheers.